Hi, it's Willow here from Willow's Web Astrology, and I'm here today just to talk a little bit about the types of readings that I offer, and also a little bit about the type of astrology that I practice. I am a practicing professional intuitive astrologer since about 2007, 2008. That's when I started my practice professionally. I started doing paid readings very gradually in 2007. And then in February 2008, I started my astrology blog, which is called Willow's Web Astrology. So it is willowsweb.blogspot.com if anybody wants to check out the blog. Basically, that's when I sort of, started dipping my toe into doing professional astrology. I had studied astrology on my own for about 4 or 5 years before I actually started doing professional readings, and I used to practice astrology on a message board site called tribe.net. There was an astrology group on that message board site, and that's kind of where I sort of cut my teeth and kind of started getting my own ideas out there into the world and interacting with other astrology enthusiasts and other professional astrologers. So that was a really, really dynamic and fun time. And then that led, of course, to starting my blog. And the interesting thing about starting my blog too was that I set out not even thinking about starting my own blog. I found a posting on a site called The Cosmic Path that I used to visit regularly, and they were looking for someone to do monthly forecasts because they had someone who was doing daily forecasts and they had someone who was doing weekly forecasts. And the very famous astrologer Anne Orderly, I remember, I hope I'm pronouncing her name properly, was one of the I think she wrote the weekly forecasts. And I'm so sorry, I cannot remember who did the daily forecasts, even though I think that was the astrologer who actually started the site. So that's a really big faux pas on my part. But anyway, regardless, I was unfortunately turned down. I submitted a January 2008 forecast and I was turned down, graciously turned down. So then I thought, okay, well, I've written this monthly forecast. What am I going to do? So I decided I would start my own blog. So I have a journalism background, and what I've done is I've basically combined journalism with astrology, and they go together quite well. You might be surprised. So I've written, I would call it a socio-political astrology blog in astrojournalism style. Not everything I write is astrojournalism. Some of it's more other forms of writing, but basically, that's what I've sort of been doing with myself. I practice astrology as a healing art. And again, as I say, I practice intuitive astrology. Now, I'm a self-taught intuitive astrologer, which I think is a fairly common path for intuitive astrologers. And how intuitive astrology differs from a more standardized astrology, is basically, up for interpretation, because even more standardized astrology does use some intuitive faculties. But intuitive astrology in particular leans toward the art side of the healing art side of astrology. And so an intuitive reading is often going to be less systematic than a more standardized reading. A more standardized reading might say to you, okay, you have the sun in this sign and that house, and that's what that means. And you have the moon in this sign and that house, and that's what that means. And you have Mercury in this sign in that house, etc., etc. Whereas an intuitive reading is a little bit more fluid often. It draws different threads together, different symbols together. Different insights might pop out of the symbols that, kind of seem to come out of nowhere. Basically, when I sit down to do a reading, the intention I have is that I want to be able to express to that person, communicate to that person whatever that person needs to know at this time in their life. I have a spiritual orientation, so I am sort of drawing in, the idea being that I am drawing in, some of this spiritual insight or intuitive insight that can help the person on their way, on their path. That's kind of the basic idea and the basic understanding of what intuitive astrology is. Intuitive astrology is sort of inner knowing, or it's felt. So when I sit down and look at a chart, I don't necessarily look at the sun placement first, and then the moon placement, and then the Mercury placement, and then the Venus placement, etc., etc. I let the chart I let myself go to whatever area of the chart is standing out or popping out at that moment, and there becomes a sort of a thread to follow through that reading and through that chart. And again, different insights are sort of combined and put together into this intuitive reading. Now, I'm just going to say right off the jump, and I've talked about this on a community radio show before, that no astrologer is going to be a universal astrologer. There's no astrologer out there who is going to be right for absolutely everyone, okay? It's the same idea as finding the right hairdresser for yourself, right? Or finding the right, doctor or natural health practitioner, or finding the right mechanic, right? Any of these services. You might have to go through a couple hairdressers before you find that hairdresser that you feel really gets you, right? Really gets what you're looking for and really knows how to make you look your best, right? And so it's the same idea with an astrologer or with any type of reader. So it's a good idea to kind of get a little bit familiar with an astrologer, with an astrologer's perspective, with their take on things, even just with their voice. You can tell a lot from a person's voice, from the tone of their voice, from the intonation, the words they use, their diction, all of this type of stuff, right? I mean, it goes back to the intuition, where you intuitively are sort of drawn to certain people, or you intuitively would like to hear what this person has to say, and other people you're not as interested in, you're not drawn to them, or you might even be full on repelled, right? Full on repelled. I'm an astrologer with, I would say I'm strongly Plutonic. And so it definitely is sort of a love-hate relationship, as far as people either really get what I'm into, or they really despise what I'm doing. And there's not much in between. So doing a video like this is just kind of putting myself out there to prospective readings customers, to say this is what I'm all about. This is what I'm all about. So the bodies that I use in my readings are the standard bodies in our zodiac, which in our solar system, which are Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And I also use the nodes of the moon, the north node of the moon and the south node of the moon. I use Chiron, which is the wounded healer. I use the 3 major asteroids and dwarf planet Ceres. So Ceres used to be considered an asteroid. In 2006, it was reclassified as a dwarf planet, same as Pluto. So Ceres, Pallas Athena, which is Ceres is the Earth Mama asteroid, a dwarf planet now, yeah. Dwarf planet. Ceres relates to agriculture, fertility, grains and cereals, nurturing, nourishing, themes of that nature. Kind of strong mothering energy, protective energy, willing to fight for her babies. That kind of energy. Pallas Athena is the female warrior. So whereas Mars is the male warrior, Pallas Athena is the female warrior. So that's an interesting one to use. Vesta, which is the asteroid of hearth and home. It represents what I see as a deep soul level investment a long-term investment of time and energy. And then, oh my gosh, the final, sorry, the fourth and final is Juno. Oh, Juno, which is the soulmate asteroid and also relates to marriage and things that we're married to. The way that I read soulmate is not necessarily romantic soulmate, though. Soulmates are basically any people that come into our lives. That could be an animal that comes into our lives to help catalyze some type of soul level growth that we couldn't do on our own, that we couldn't get to on our own. And if you look at the mythology of these asteroids and dwarf planets, you know, there's an edge to it. There's some hardcore, you know, there's some hardcore themes to it. So the idea again behind intuitive astrology is that I don't necessarily touch on all of these points in every reading. There will be certain points that are more prominent at the time, and that those will be the ones that I focus on. Because again, the thing about an astrology chart is that it is incredibly complex. It's basically a soul document, and the symbols are all very layered. The interactions are all very, you know, beautiful and nuanced. And so you could talk for hours and hours and hours and hours about one particular chart, right? You could pick out item after item, but that is very overwhelming, right? That's too much information. And so in order to keep it to something that people can work with, as an intuitive astrologer, I'm looking at, again, the sort of most prominent areas, the most prominent themes and symbols that are coming up, and how those are kind of working together as far as where the person is in their life. Okay, so I use those bodies. I generally use the Placidus house system, but I can use other house systems by request. Different astrologers have different ideas. It's kind of a somewhat tiresome debate among astrologers which house system is best or what have you. I'm an intuitive astrologer, so the idea is that whatever house system speaks to you most strongly and clearly and accurately, that's the house system that you're going to want to use. And so for me, I've tried the other house systems and I see the merit in them, but Placidus is what I always come back to, because that, you know, again, that's what speaks to me the most strongly. And I think that's what you want. You want your astrologer to be getting clear insights about your chart and about what's going on with you. Okay, so the types of astrology readings that I offer. Now, I will say that the most common thing to do is for someone to just come to me and tell me what areas of their life they want me to look out at that moment. What's coming up? Are they having a particular problem? Is there a particular area they're curious about? So I like to do more of a focused reading, in that there's sort of some concrete direction going on. I do readings by MP3 or telephone. So those are verbal readings. And those come in either 30-minute or 60-minute sessions. And I charge, for a verbal reading, I charge $155 Canadian, actually $160 on Etsy, because Etsy has some higher fees associated with it. But I charge, so $155 Canadian for a verbal reading, or $160 on Etsy. So just a hot tip, if you go through my website, it'll be $5 off, or $90 for a 30-minute. And now that might sound like a lot of money, but I will say that I don't do cold readings. So I don't go into the reading without having seen your chart and just kind of dive into it. I do preparation for the reading. So I look at the chart, I come up with the main structure of the reading, I make notes, I let things gel, I give it some time and let other insights bubble up to the surface. So there's a process in doing a reading. And so there's the prep work, and then there's the actual reading. Any reading that is done over the phone will also have an MP3 recording. And so the MP3 recorded readings will be sent out to the person after they are completed. I also do an email or a written PDF reading. And the email readings are more labor intensive and take longer to produce than the verbal readings. So I've just recently changed the pricing structure on those readings. And so email reading, a full email reading is between 4,000 and 5,000 words. And I'm charging $200 Canadian for that. And a half email reading is between 2,000 and 2,500 words. And that is $100 Canadian. And again, with the written readings, it takes actually probably between 3 and 4 hours to do a full reading, and maybe around a couple hours to do a half reading. So, and this is intensive writing and reviewing and looking in the ephemeris and all this type of stuff. So I still feel I feel that the pricing structure is fair for what I'm putting into it, for my time, energy, and expertise that are being put into the readings. Okay, so going back to, sorry, I'm a little bit meandering in this video. The most common thing is for a person to, like I say, just tell me what they're interested in knowing about, what area of life areas of life that they're really interested in, and I go from there. Now, the most popular reading that I do is transits to the natal chart. So the natal chart is the kind of core chart, and then the transits are the current placements. And so we're looking at the current placements and how those placements are affecting the natal chart, right? The other thing that I do is transits to the secondary progress chart. So what I normally do is whichever chart is, again, speaking to me most strongly, that's the one that I focus on. So usually I would say that it is transits to the natal, and then I do any changes that are going on, any shifts that are going on in the secondary progress chart, or any major transits that are going on in the secondary progress chart. I will weave that into the reading as well. That's the most popular reading that I do. Now I can also do natal chart readings alone. So if someone is looking to learn more about their own birth chart, their own natal astrology, I can do that type of reading. I also do relationship synastry, which is how two different people's charts interact. Also, relationship composite is another thing that I sometimes add into a relationship synastry reading. And the composite is the midpoint. Oh, I use the midpoints between the two individuals' placements, and it creates a chart of its own, the composite chart. And the composite chart is basically the chart of the relationship itself. Okay, so those are some of the types of readings that I do. Just kind of a meat and potatoes offering. I also do a reading of what I call the ladies of the zodiac, and that is using Ceres, Pallas Athena, Juno, and Vesta? Sorry, why am I having a hard time remembering these ladies? And also Black Moon Lilith. I should have mentioned that I also use Black Moon Lilith in my readings as well. And those are some of the feminine influences that are somewhat considered secondary influences, but they are sometimes really powerful to learn more about, or just to be more aware of in our own charts, because they can create some real sort of revelatory moments. I also offer tutoring sessions or astrology lessons as well. And so astrology tutoring would basically be just sort of helping you wherever you are in your studies. Okay, so if you have some astrological studies under your belt, and you just like a little bit of honing or direction, or you want to learn some different techniques, or you want to practice certain techniques, that's what a tutoring session would be. A lesson would be more so teaching you about a particular thing. So for example, if you wanted to learn more about Ceres, if you wanted to learn more about Black Moon Lilith, if you wanted to learn more about Pluto as a generational force, something along those lines, there would be a lesson that would be tailored to you. As I said, I am an astro journalist, and I've written my website since 2008. My blog since 2008, and basically, I would say that's. I would say basically that's what I use as the primary platform is my blog. I also have a relatively new website, which is willowsweb.com, and it's more focused it includes the articles as well, but it's more focused on the readings, tutoring, and that type of thing. Going back to the blog, you can also become a patron again, and that is that gives you access to longer, more in-depth articles. I shoot for about 8 to 10 articles per year, and they're extensive articles, so they're meaty. Okay, they're meaty, and that's another way that you can access Willow's Web Astrology. So this is basically just the long and the short of what I do. Gives you a certain understanding of what I'm all about, and if anyone is interested in delving in further, if anyone's interested in booking a reading, you can book through, again, my Willow's Web Astrology blog, which is willowsweb.blogspot.com. You can book through the website, which is willowswebastrology.com, or you can book through Etsy, which is Willow's Web Astrology Etsy shop. You can also just contact me directly, because I also take different payment forms if those online sites don't work for you. So those are the Willow's Web Astrology offerings in a nutshell, and I am just so grateful that I'm able to share this beautiful, wonderful source of guidance, source of inspiration, source of insight, source of knowledge and wisdom with the world. I'm so grateful that astrology came into my life, and I'm so grateful that I am able to now practice astrology as a professional healing arts practitioner, a professional intuitive astrologer, and I am very gleeful to be part of the long history of working astrologers on this planet. So yeah. Once again, Willow's Web Astrology blog is at willowsweb.blogspot.com. Willow's Web Astrology website is willowswebastrology.com, or Willow's Web Astrology Etsy site. Thanks for listening.